Chapter 4. Kans begins his persecutions. After Vasudeva adjusted things as they had been before he carried Krsna to Gokul, and all the doors and gates became similarly closed, the gatekeepers awoke and heard the newborn child crying. Kans was waiting to hear the news of child's birth, and the gatekeepers immediately approached him and informed him that the child was born. At that time, Kans got up from his bed very quickly and exclaimed, "Now the cruel death of my life is born." Kans became perplexed now that his death was approaching, and his hair scattered. Immediately he proceeded towards the place where the child was born. Devaki, on seeing her brother approaching, prayed in a very meek attitude to Kans, "My dear brother, please do not kill this female child. I promise that this child will be the wife of your son. Therefore, don't kill her. You are not to be killed by any female child. The omen was that you are to be killed by a male child, so please do not kill her. My dear brother, you have killed so many of my children who were just born, shining like the sun. That is not your fault. You have been advised by demoniac friends to kill my children, but now I beg you to excuse this girl at least. Let her live as my daughter." Kans was so cruel that he did not listen to the pitiful prayers of his sister Devaki. He forcibly grabbed the newborn child to rebuke his sister and attempted to bash her on a stone mercilessly. This is a graphic example of a cruel demon who could sacrifice all relationships for the sake of personal gratification. But the child immediately slipped out of his hands, went up into the sky, and appeared with 8 arms as the younger sister of Vishnu. She was decorated with nice garments and flower garlands and ornaments. In her 8 hands she held a bowl, lance, arrows, sword, conch shell, disc, club, and shield. Seeing the appearance of the child, who was actually the goddess Durga, all the demigods from different planets like Siddhalok, Charanlok, Gandharvalok, Apsaralok, Kinnarlok, and Uraglok presented her with various articles and began to offer their respective prayers. From above, the goddess addressed Kans, "You rascal, how can you kill me? The child who will kill you is already born before me, somewhere within this world. Don't be so cruel to your poor sister." After this appearance, Goddess Durga became known by various names in various parts of the world. After hearing these words, Kans became very much overwhelmed with fear. Out of pity, he immediately released Vasudeva and Devaki from the bondage of their shackles and very politely began to address them. He said, "My dear sister and brother-in-law, I have acted just like a demon in killing my own nephews, your children, and thereby I have given up all consideration of our intimate relationship. I do not know what will be the result of this envious acts of mine. Probably I shall be sent to hell, where killers of Brahmins go. I am surprised, however, that the celestial prophecy has not come true. It is not only in human society that false propaganda is found. Now it appears that even the celestial denizens speak lies. Because I believed in the words of the celestial denizens, I have committed so many sins by killing the children of my sister. My dear Vasudeva and Devaki, you are very good. You are both very great souls. I have no instructions to give you, but still I request that you not be sorry for the death of your children. Even one of us is under the control of superior power, and that superior power does not allow us to remain together. We are bound to be separated from our friends and relatives in due course of time. But we must know for certain that even after the disappearance of different material bodies, the soul remains intact eternally. For example, there are many pots made of earthly clay, and they are prepared and also broken. But in spite of this, the earth remains as it is perpetually. Similarly, bodies of soul under different conditions are made and destroyed, but a spirit soul remains eternally. So there is nothing to lament over. Everyone should understand that this material body is different from the spirit soul. And so long as one does not come to that understanding, he is sure to accept the process of transmigration from one body to another. My dear sister Devaki, you are so gentle and kind. Please excuse me. Don't be aggrieved by the death of your children, which I have caused. Actually, this was not done by me, because all these are predestined activities. One has to act according to the predestined plan, even unwillingly. People misunderstand that with the end of the body, the self dies, or they think that one can kill another living entity. All these misconceptions oblige one to accept the conditions of material existence. In other words, as long as one is not firmly convinced of the eternality of the soul, one is subjected to the tribulation of being killer and killed. My dear Devaki, my dear sister Devaki and brother-in-law Vasudev, kindly excuse the atrocities I have committed against you. I am very poor-hearted and you are so great-hearted, so take compassion upon me and excuse me. While Kans was speaking to his brother-in-law and sister, tears flowed from his eyes, and he fell down at their feet. Believing the words of Durga Devi, whom he had tried to kill, Kans immediately released his brother-in-law and sister. He personally unlocked the iron shackles and very sympathetically showed his friendship for his family members. When Devaki saw her brother so repentant, she also became pacified and forgot all the atrocious activities against her children. Vasudeva also, forgetting all the past incidents, spoke smilingly with his brother-in-law. Vasudeva told Kans, "My dear fortunate brother-in-law, what you are saying about the material body and soul is correct. Every living entity is born ignorant, misunderstanding this material body to be his self. This conception of life is due to ignorance, and on the basis of this ignorance, we create enmity or friendship. Lamentation, jubilation, fearfulness, envy, greed, illusion, and madness are different features of our material conception of life. A person influenced like this engages in enmity only due to the material body. Being engaged in such activities, we forget our eternal friendship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead." Vasudeva took the opportunity of Kans' benevolence and informed him that his aesthetic activities were also due to his misconception of life, namely, taking the material body to be the self. When Vasudeva talked with Kans in such illuminating way, Kans became very much pleased and his guilt for killing his nephew subsided. With the permission of his sister Devaki and brother-in-law Vasudeva, he returned to his home with a relieved mind. But next day, Kans called all his counselors together and narrated to them all the incidents that had happened the night before. All the counselors of Kans were demons and eternal enemies of demigods. So they became depressed upon hearing their master speak of the night's events. And although they were not very much experienced or learned, they began to give instructions to Kans as follows. "Dear sir, Let us now make arrangements to kill all children who were born within the last 10 days in all towns, countries, villages, and pasturing grounds. Let us execute this plan indiscriminately. We think that demigods cannot do anything against us if we perform these atrocities. They are always afraid of fighting with us, and even if they wish to check our activities, they will not declare to do so. Because of your immeasurable strength, they fear your bow. Indeed, we have practical experience that whenever you stood to fight with them and began to shower your arrows on them, they immediately fled in all the directions to save their lives. Many of the demigods were unable to fight with you, and they immediately surrendered themselves unto you by loosening their turbans and the tufts on hair on their heads. With folded hands they begged you to spare them and said, "My lord, we are all afraid of your strength. Please release us from this dangerous fight." We have also seen many times that you would never kill such surrendered fighters when they were all fearful, their bows, arrows, and chariots broken, forgetful of their military activities, and unable to fight with you. So actually, we have nothing to fear from these demigods. They are very proud of being great fighters in peacetime outside the war field, but actually, they cannot show any talent or military power on the war field. Although Lord Vishnu, Lord Shiva, and Lord Brahma are always ready to help the demigods headed by Indra, we have no reason to be afraid of them. As far as Lord Vishnu is concerned, he has already hidden himself within the hearts of all living entities, and he cannot come out. As far as Lord Shiva is concerned, he has renounced all the activities. He has already entered into the forest. And Lord Brahma is always engaged in different types of austerities and meditation. And what to speak of Indra? He is a straw in comparison to your strength. Therefore, we have nothing to fear from any of these demigods, but we must not neglect them, for the demigods are our determined enemies. We must be careful to protect ourselves. To root them out from their very existence, we should just engage ourselves in your service and be always ready for your command. The demons continued to say, "If there is some disease in the body which is neglected, it worsens and becomes incurable. Similarly, when one is not careful about restraining the senses and lets them loose, it is then very difficult to control them. Therefore, we must now be very careful of demigods before they get too strong to be subdued. The foundation of the strength of demigods is Lord Vishnu, because the ultimate goal of all religious principles is to satisfy him. The Vedic injunctions, the Brahmins, the cows, austerities, sacrifices, performance of charity, and distribution of wealth are all for satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. So let us immediately begin by killing the Brahmins who are in charge of Vedic knowledge, along with the great sages who are in charge of sacrificial ritualistic performances. Let us kill all the cows which are the source of butter, which is so necessary for performing sacrifices. Please give us your permission to kill all these creatures." Actually, the limbs of transcendental body of Lord Vishnu are the Brahmins, the cows, Vedic knowledge, austerity, truthfulness, sense and mind control, faithfulness, charity, tolerance, and performance of sacrifices. Lord Vishnu is situated in everyone's heart and is the leader of all demigods, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma. Therefore, we think that to persecute the great sages and Brahmins is to kill Lord Vishnu. Thus being advised by the demoniac minister, Kans, who was from the very beginning the greatest rascal, decided to persecute the Brahmins and Vaishnavas, being entrapped by the shackles of all devouring eternal time. He ordered the demons to harass all kinds of saintly persons, and then he entered his house. The adherents of Kans were all influenced by the mode of passion as well as illusion by the mode of ignorance, and their only business was to create enmity with saintly persons. Such activities can only reduce one's duration of life. The demons accelerated the process and invited their deaths as soon as possible. The result of persecuting saintly persons is not only ultimately death. The act is so offensive that the perpetrator also gradually loses his beauty, fame, his religious principles, and his promotion to higher planets is checked. Driven by various kinds of mental concoctions, the demons diminish all kinds of auspiciousness, and offense at the lotus feet of the devotees and Brahmins is a greater offense than that committed at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A civilization that commits such sinful activities generally loses all faith in Supreme Lord, and such a godless civilization becomes the source of all calamities in human society.